May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer.
Amen.
Please be seated. Jerry and I received an extraordinary gift this week. A basket of summer fruit. Peaches. From Georgia even, and they were perfectly ripe and juicy. Now I had fantasies of making this prize into peach preserves, saving this bright, sunny flavor to cheer up our dour English muffins in late December, or maybe remind us of sunshine in March's freezing rain. Or possibly I'd make a peach crumble or one of those really fancy New York Times recipes, like little bits of peach wrapped up in prosciutto, or maybe serve them along in slices beside tomatoes. But these peaches will not survive the day. We're eating them plain, greedily, with their brilliant, succulent juices running down our arms onto our hands with the wild abandon of a bunch of kids on summer vacation. I'll remember the peach's intense, juicy summer fruit flavor in December when the sun begins to set at 4:30 in the afternoon, to bring my thoughts back to God's bounty and grace. A basket of summer fruit is more than just a snack or a treat or a dessert. It's a basket of the very best of us. Wholesome simplicity, sweet memories as rich and fresh as that juice running down my arm, and happy and full times of love and ease. Maybe that's why Amos begins his gloomy prophecy in our reading today with a basket of summer fruit. It's hard to listen to prophets. They're depressing, for one thing, always going on and on about gloom and doom and all the consequences, they say, of our failure to listen and heed their advice. And their warnings are so dire. Also, if we don't listen carefully, translating their context to ours into something we understand today in our lives, we can lose the thread of what they're trying to tell us. Take our friend, Amos, for example. This is the same Amos of the plumb line from last week. Amos, the basket of summer fruit today. And even though it can sound like another time in a far-off, unfamiliar place that has nothing in the world to do with us today, if you put Amos's reference into our own context, his prophecy is, as they say on TV, ripped from the headlines. So what did Amos really say? He's calling out the values of a culture and an economy that have gotten distracted from God's justice and love. Amos is telling us what happens when a society loses its connection with generosity, humanity, and grace, and starts racking up points on the wrong scoreboard and is worried and distracted by many things. Will I have enough? Will we be able to maintain our standard of living? How do we maintain our comfort and convenience with regulations protecting the economy and our environment? We will make the ephah small and the shekel great, Amos says, of those who have veered away from God's justice and mercy. They practice deceit and false balances, or shrinkflation, as it's called in the news. You know that shrinkflation, it's difficult to see in real time at the grocery store, but that's when you get a smaller box with fewer crackers or less breakfast cereal for the same price. They don't raise prices, they just reduce the quantity. It's a false balance and a false measure. And it's just one of those examples of a slippery slope, that gradual and often unaware slide from a specific standard into a free fall of maladaptation. When we hit the bottom of the slide with a bump, we wonder how we got there. And we can no longer remember, identify, or return to the place where we started or the person we were. Is prophet wrong? Of course not. That's not what Amos is saying. Amos is telling us to pay attention, to remember God's justice and mercy, and make sure that we don't forget basic human goodness and what holds us all together. That's what Amos's plumb line is for. The plumb line shows us which way is straight on our walls, when our walls and our standards and our lives have gone crooked. You know how when you were swinging as a kid, how you go crooked just a little bit, and then on 5, 7, 9 swings, all of a sudden you're seesawing way out of your path. Sometimes these changes are imperceptible over time, and we can't even begin to say when these things began to change. With the basket of summer fruit, Amos reminds us of those sweet fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Those fruits of the Spirit that can put us back into right relationship with God and with each other. We are spiritually and relationally starved without those fruits of the Spirit. And the famine that Amos is talking about, the consequence of our failure to listen, and when we start to stray off plumb, it's a famine of the fruits of the Spirit. If we don't keep those baskets of summer fruit, the very best of us, in mind in the cold, dark days of winter, when our own challenges and struggles overwhelm us, we will no longer hear the voice of God. If we've lost all sense of justice and mercy, we will no longer even recognize injustice when we see it, and we won't be able to fix it. It's the same with Mary and Martha. I love to cook. And I love to entertain and share big family meals. And as a Martha myself, I've always really bristled at what Jesus says to Martha. Martha makes a very reasonable, in my view, request for a little help in the kitchen. Mary's just sitting there, right? And the dinner is not going to cook itself, particularly over fire in the backyard. And yet Jesus tells Martha to stand down. Mary, he says, has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her. Ouch. That was always a judgment that hurt. And I just couldn't reconcile it with everything else I knew about Jesus, who, after all, prepared dinner all by himself for 5,000 people just in the last chapter on short provisions without breaking a sweat. Today, for the first time, Amos's plumb line showed me where my understanding of Jesus' words to Mary was at least 10 degrees off plumb. The basket of summer fruit, the fruits of the Spirit, joy, love, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, helped me to hear Jesus' words in a new way. After Jesus' own focus through the gospel on table hospitality, eating and drinking with sinners, it just can't be that he is really saying that sitting still and listening at God's feet is qualitatively better, ranked above, prioritized, the nurturing expression of love that comes of a shared meal, well prepared and lovingly served. What if Jesus is liberating all people, even women, even Mary, even Martha, with his words to Martha? Jesus just pulled out Amos's plumb line, and Martha's attention had gone off plumb. as much as I had. Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. As Elizabeth Meyer Bolton writes, this story is not a critique of kitchen duty or the active life or just plain getting things done. It's a critique of worry and distraction. It's a critique of being fragmented, of chasing after many things when there's only one thing. God is not against cooking or hosting or the labor of cooking and cleaning that makes love possible. The only thing that God is against in this picture is worry and distraction. Consider the lilies of the field, as we sang in our farewell to Maris Humphreys, our beloved parishioner of 50 years, in her service yesterday. The lilies grow, but they neither toil nor spin. They focus on their lily thing, and that's their plumb line. We just need to focus on our thing and not get distracted. We can delight in God by listening and study, and we can delight in God by preparing and serving up the fruits of the Spirit, the very best of ourselves, in a grand summer picnic, and maybe even with peach cobbler. Amen.